the existence of our company was at stake here, and the likely outcome was that when I go home this weekend, I won't have a company anymore. The 28 years that I had put into this business with my business partner, that multi-million-dollar business was now worth zero.
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of MSP Mindset. I'm your host, Damien Stevens, and I'm really excited to talk about a really tough topic with Robert Cioffi. And just as a spoiler, if you're an MSP and ever wondered what happens if a lot of my clients, or maybe more than a lot, are attacked, encrypted, etc. We're going to answer that, and we're going to actually get into practical things of what do you do. Before we get any further, just to introduce Robert, he is and has been an MSP for decades. He is currently the CTO and co-founder of Progressive Computing. He's served on the advisory board of many tech companies, Axient, Exigence, Atacama, and others. He is currently the chairperson of the CompTIA emergency response team. He knows a few things about emergencies. Is an involved peer group facilitator at IT Nation, and owes much of his creative nature and problem-solving skills to the thousands of hours playing Dungeons and Dragons.
I have to admit that publicly, well, because it's on my profile. But yes, I attribute much of my success in life to being able to defeat monsters and dragons made up in our heads. So yes.
Right. I love that. I love to have some color, right? We're all human. And totally. Despite all the really cool things that you've accomplished, it helps me connect to there's a real human under there.
Yep.
So let's kind of start at the beginning, Robert.
Sure.
You've had an MSP for a long time, and you were telling me about a story where I'm going to let you tell it, but there was a 0 day in an RMM, and all sorts of things started to unfold. So take us back to then or before.
It was worse than any made-up monster we ever encountered while role-playing in my best friend's basement throughout my teenager years. But thank you first, let me say that, Damien, for inviting me onto your show to leverage your platform to talk about what I think is a very important topic in our industry, cybercrime, ransomware. What does an MSP do when they are 100% compromised? And I'll tell you what the answer is not. The answer is not hiding. The answer is not staying quiet. There is no shame in victimhood, and there is a lot of strength in vulnerability, which I hope, humbly, that you will agree with me by the time we get to the end of this conversation. So if I may set the stage, and probably many listeners already know, and I know, Damien, that you already know, but on July 2nd of 2021, a threat actor exploited a 0 day exploit in Kaseya VSA's RMM tool, which we were using to manage 100% of our customers. They were able to use that exploit to create an administrator login for themselves, uploaded Revel Sode no Kibi, and pushed a script out to install that to 100% of our endpoints. On that day, it was a total of 250 servers that were completely encrypted, as well as about 2,200 endpoints, which I would classify as just your standard Windows desktops and laptops. So, Friday, July 2nd, just before Independence Day weekend. What am I doing this weekend anyway? So let's start recovering all of our customers.
I want to unpack a couple of things you said there. First of all, everybody uses an RMM.
Correct.
Second of all, it's one of the largest. And so my point is, and third of all, there's a 0 day. So my point is, from everything I've understood about this, it's not, sometimes I've talked to others, MSPs, that have assumed the guys that got popped were asleep at the wheel. They were the guys that never put in patches. They don't have any cybersecurity.
Yep.
But, here you are using one of the top vendors, one updating things, having a good cybersecurity culture and hygiene, and doing really nothing out of outside of best practices.
Yes.
And that's what I want to highlight, right? None of us are prepared for a 0 day by definition.
This is not a defensive answer by any stretch, but when the attack happened, one of the things that I thought about was, well, what sort of culpability might I have? Did I leave ourselves exposed, or did somebody here do something to leave ourselves in that state? Did we leave any doors or windows open, right? And when I looked and I saw the evidence, which I have hard evidence to indicate this, we were not only following their best practices, but we were fully patched on their very latest patch. I should say we were only one patch level behind, and the patch level that we were behind on was simply a feature update. It wasn't their latest security update. So their last security update, I think it was at either the end of May or beginning of June. We patched our system then, and we got hit on July 2nd. So it's not like we, and I imagine the other 50 or 60 some odd victims around the world who were affected exactly the way we were using a 2 or 3 year old version. This is not about, believe me, the negligence conversation went through my head all day on Friday, July 2nd. But I found some solace, if there was any to be found on that day, knowing that A, we were not alone in this attack, and B, there was little, if anything, that we could have done to prevent it.
Yeah. I don't know who wouldn't beat themselves up about it, right? What did we do? Did we just leave RDP open to the internet? Did we, are we too many patches behind? Did we get, because I think sometimes,
right? Blank password,
right.
Whatever, right? Somebody leaves some door open somewhere, because, by nature of what we do, we sometimes take these little shortcuts to just like kind of get through the day and then forget that I left, the back door open. And that's not the case. I mean, I thought it might have been. I was actually kind of expecting it to be that, since the evidence would show that, well, how did they just march in and do this, right? No one here, and including myself, would have thought that a 0 day exploit would have been the culprit. Now, I mean, listen, all things being equal, as many layers of hell that we walk through, Damien, it would, that's one of the alternate realities of this universe, of the multiverse that we live in. In that version of the universe, we would have done something negligent, and it could have been far worse. So people will often say to me, like, "Oh my God, that's like the worst nightmare." And I say, don't let me fool you into thinking that it was a walk in the park, because it was not. Hell was very hot for us, but all things considered, it could have been worse. Imagine if we had done something negligent, right? And it was only us. Or if there was data exfiltration, or a lot of ors. We can talk for a half an hour just on the ors.
Yeah.
But we were fortunate in some ways, which is really weird for me to say, that it could have been worse. Could have been.
So let's talk about, you mentioned 60 companies. You mean more than likely 60 MSPs? We don't know for certain.
Yeah, well, we don't. The estimate was at the time, and I'm sure I can go find, and there's tons of news articles out there that I'll say, quote unquote, documented this, or at least reported it. There were, and I believe Kaseya had come out with a statement that there were approximately 50 of their customers that were affected by this. One is huge, or at least one of the customers of an MSP was a customer by the name of Co-op, and they're in the news. Like, I'm not revealing anything secret, because you can go look them up. There's a Swedish supermarket with 800 stores throughout Europe, and 500 of which were hit by this because their MSP, whom I've forgotten their name, and it's probably not important for me to even say who they are, but you could find out. they used their CompTIA instance to get to all the co-op supermarkets. So 500 out of 800 stores shut down for about a week because all those cash registers were being protected, or I should say being monitored with CompTIA VSA. And guess what operating system they were all running? That's right, Windows. And guess what got encrypted that day? So they couldn't transact. I think about all the people who lost wages. I think about all of the perishables that might have had to have been disposed of, the loss of revenue. I mean, they're a big corporation. They probably could survive things better than most small businesses like your typical MSP, including us, right? I put myself in that category. They had probably had more resources to be able to withstand something like this. But still, I think about them and I wonder, like that was a big impact right there alone. Just one customer, not even one CompTIA customer, but a customer of a CompTIA customer. So, there were kindergartens in New Zealand that were affected by this. There were municipalities all across the United States that made the news because of this. And I'm sure there are thousands of untold stories that you just won't hear about. You'll hear me, and you'll hear me talk generically about my 80 customers on that day. But what about the other 40 to 50-ish MSPs who aren't talking about this? Now, I don't fault them. So if you are one of them and you're listening to me, please, by all means, it's not a criticism.
Right.
And I completely understand why you might want to go, look, this is behind me. I don't want to talk about it. Let's put it aside. But okay, I'm choosing a different path. And I'm not looking for applause. I'm just looking for a little bit of support and getting the word out there because it's really important we talk about this.
That's right. It starts with talking about it, right? Because emotionally, from a business perspective, community perspective, like the worst thing we could do is not try to get the word out and help. So take me back to, how did you even realize you were encrypted? Take me back to that July 2nd day.
Yeah, so it was a beautiful day here in New York. If you live in the Northeast or in the Upper Midwest, at least my friends in the Upper Midwest tell me it's the same thing there. Winters can be shitty. They can be, cold, icy, dark. Like I say in New York, for about 3 months out of the year, the sky is gray and the ground is brown. And sometimes it's white with ice. So, days are short. When it's July 2nd and it's 80 plus degrees out and there isn't a cloud in the sky and there's zero humidity, those are the days that make you feel like that dried up potted plant that finally gets a good gulp of water, right? You spring back to life, you breathe deeply the air. It was just so beautiful. The forecast was the same for the next couple of days. We had plans, personal plans at home to spend time with friends. We were going on a boat ride, and friends of ours have a boat. We were going to go on a boat ride in the Hudson River, maybe go down to the Statue of Liberty or cruise around Manhattan a little bit. It was the mood was jovial. It was lighthearted. Everybody was looking forward to that weekend. So it was about noon. I was sitting in my kitchen, and I saw my director of operations ascend the staircase to the second floor where I was sitting. Turns the corner down the hall, now walking towards me as I'm sitting in the kitchen looking at him through the kitchen threshold. And I knew something was instantly wrong by his body language, his gait, even me being nearsighted. I could see that at that distance that there was just something wrong with his complexion and his face. And so I got up, and as I passed another individual in the kitchen, I said, holy shit, I think somebody just died. I mean, that was exactly what I was thinking just by looking at him. I knew instantly, and I'm not normally an intuitive person in that way, but his body language spoke volumes to me. And I was bracing myself for, like, oh my God, did one of my family members just call the office with terrible news? Did something happen to my business partner? Did something happen to one of our engineers in the field? What terrible news am I about to hear? I was steeling myself for the catastrophic news. And while I don't want to necessarily liken this to being either better or worse than somebody dying, because all things considered, nobody died in this, thankfully. Um, but the look on Jay's face, spoke that sort of set that tone for me. And when I approached him, we got within very close. We were only about 2 feet apart, and Jay and I have an excellent personal and professional relationship, but he wouldn't look me in the eye. And that's when I really felt like, oh, okay, like this is bad. Like, what's going on here? And
Right.
when I finally got him to utter the words, he said, all of our customers are ransomwared. And then he finally started to make eye contact with me. When you hear those words, they're too surreal to process. I mean, it's almost like a bad joke. Like, come on, like all of them. What the hell? Like, so I rejected his reality and tried to insert my own, which was no. That's not real. Like, which ones or which one? Right? Can't be
Right.
all of them. That's an impossibility, right? And he was like, no, it's all of them. And again, I refuted, which he retorted back with, and to this day, we have a debate, Jay and I, about whether he did this subconsciously or intentionally. We don't know which. However, he started to rattle off all of our customers, and I think he chose to give them to me in order of revenue, by largest to smallest. Now, we didn't name all 80 of them, and I'm kind of giggling here, and I don't mean to laugh about it and make anybody think that I'm flippant or nonchalant about this. I do have a philosophy in life that you have only 2 choices: laugh or cry. So believe me, on the inside, there's a maelstrom of tears that are ready to kind of come out. But I kind of like to find the humor in even the worst of times. And it was a little funny that, he did this. At least I found that humor. But those words, every time he named one of those clients, they were all big names representing all in excess of 10,000 a month in MRR for us. And they were like pancaking down upon me, like, collapsing dominoes. And not just the little ones on a table, but like, this dominoes the size of houses, just slamming down on me, each one just kind of pushing me further down into the earth, until I kind of felt like all that beautiful weather that I just talked about, that proverbially inside the office, it felt like the walls were closing in and that there was no air and that the room darkened. I mean, I know that's not what actually physically happened, but that's the way it felt. Um, so one of the things we did is we went right back to my office, where you see me sitting right now with the same computer and the same 3 monitors that I have. The only thing that's different is my mic and camera. And sat here frantically trying to figure out what the hell was wrong. I think even at that moment, Damien, I was still incredulous. Like, this is just too unbelievable to
Right.
be a reality, right? And by the way, meanwhile, like, when Jay and I were talking out in the hall outside the kitchen, and as we maneuvered over into my office, I could hear and see people on the phone. I could see people's body languages getting serious. I could hear words like, I'm sorry, like, we'll get a technician. I don't know what's going on. Give me, please calm down. All kinds of alarmed kind of conversations, just little snippets that were enough for me to piece into the story of what was happening or unfolding before me as further evidence that, no, this was a really serious situation. So as I was trying to log into Kaseya at my desk, and trying to figure out what the hell was going on, I had one of my chief engineers on my cell phone, on speakerphone, and I finally got, I think, the final nail in the coffin for me was when I watched all the icons on my desktop flip to that white box. Now, I know this is a technical audience, and you probably already know what that means, but if anyone listening doesn't understand what that means when Windows displays an icon, it knows that a docx is a Word document and displays the icon for it, right, Damien? So, and same thing with Excel, an XLSX or a PDF, it shows the appropriate icon for it. When a file gets encrypted, Windows doesn't know what that file is anymore and puts a white box in its place. So as I watched all those icons flip to white boxes, that's when it really solidified in my mind that we were dead. We were beyond repair. We were hanging on the edge, about to fall into the abyss. The existence of our company was at stake here, and the likely outcome was that when I go home this weekend, I won't have a company anymore. The 28 years that I had put into this business with my business partner, that multi-million-dollar business was now worth zero. And it might have even been worth negative, considering all the potential lawsuits and other costs that might be coming our way. I thought about recalling my daughter back from college and telling her, she made it halfway through with, awesome grades, but she wouldn't be able to return because I wouldn't be able to afford it. That maybe I might need to sell my house.
Wow.
The personal impact of me thinking about my life plan that I worked so hard on with my wife, our financial plan, our retirement plan, and family vacations, and all the things that are important to us personally. I felt this tremendous guilt, Damien, of that I failed everybody somehow, that I failed my family, I failed our employees, I failed my partner. I don't know why. Maybe it's Catholic guilt. I don't know, but I felt that, and it's unreasonable, especially now, to say, well, why were you feeling that way? It's just what I felt. I felt I have failed the world. I thought about even all the local business relationships as well as the community relationships that we've had, and I felt embarrassed. I felt like I was worthless, and these were feelings that I never feel. I am an A-type. I'm a lion. I am, always in charge. I'm the guy that everybody looks to like fix the problem or figure crap out. And here I was thinking I'm dead. Like I contemplated my own mortality at that moment, Damien. I was frozen, and it was scary as, I want to say the F word, but it was scary as you know what. And I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was frozen for about 10 minutes, speechless, thoughtless. I mean, it wasn't, like most technicians like me who built a business, you always, even when you're having a difficult problem, you're always kind of like thinking about, or, puzzling around, or ruminating on a potential solution, or different ideas, or you're stretching. But I'm telling you, my mind went completely black. It went totally dark, and I couldn't even formulate a coherent thought. That's how bad this was. And so emotionally, I was in such a horrible place that I knew I needed to snap myself out of this. I needed to defibrillate, right? I screwed up that word, right? I needed to defibrillate here to get my heart rhythm back, to start breathing and thinking again, because this was just, otherwise I had no other choice other than to tell everybody, sorry, everybody go home. Let's disconnect the phones. I'll send an email to all our clients to say we're out of business. Good luck. Right. That's an option. It was an option. And believe me, the thought crossed my mind for about 5 milliseconds.
Sure.
But, I arrested that thought. In fact, I killed that thought immediately. But that's where your head goes, right? And then I even felt bad and guilty about even thinking that, right? Yeah, it was not fun, man. Not fun.
So just for context for everybody, how many years in business when this happened?
At the time, it was 28 years. So this February, so it is right at the end of January when we're recording this. And so next month, and about a month from now, we'll be hitting our 31st year. So we had just passed our 28th year at that point.
Yeah. So as just a fellow human, and just somebody that's been in MSP and I've had the opportunity to help some MSPs through this, I don't know why you wouldn't beat yourself up, right? We want to solve the problem, and there's usually 2 or 3 different ways we can solve it, especially coming from a technical background, but also just the gravity of, you took the risk and built a business and built those business and community relationships and hired the people that I know you feel like I do that depend on you, right?
And they did, and they still do. And I
Right.
felt that sense. They were like children to me, right? I mean,
Right.
I don't mean them in that sense that, but like I felt like I had an obligation to provide for them.
Right. Right. And that's, I want to just talk about that, because if you're not feeling that, you're not really admitting it, I think. And 28 years in business, like you said, that's what you did for retirement. That's what you did to put your daughter through college. That's, in a lot of ways, the American dream. And, now you're, when you're faced with that, just is gone, in no,
Well, that's
no
what I
time.
felt. I felt like somebody stole it from me, right? Like,
Right.
how could I put 28 years into something and then within seconds it be gone? And actually, the void that it left was actually still a bill I had to pay, right? Because, like I said, of what I was kind of thinking at that moment, like, oh my God, I'm going to get my ass sued off, like
Right.
by 80 different companies,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like, how does one survive that?
Right. So what the heck, where do you go from there? What the heck do you do next?
Um, well, you can't see, but up here on the shelf over there, I got all kinds of alcoholic beverages. Got some hard stuff up there. No, I'm kidding. I actually do have that stuff here, but that's not why it's here. Not at all. They're mainly gifts from people who probably commiserated with me on that day. There's only one that's cracked open, and just a little bit's gone. But anyway, in all seriousness. I told you I try to laugh whenever I can.
Yeah.
But I felt like the first thing I needed to do was to rally the troops. This was war, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had I'm a big history buff. So if you've seen my presentation, and hopefully I'll get that book out one of these days, it's coming along. I channeled my inner Winston Churchill and my General Patton at the same time. And the General Patton came out and said, stand up, like, march, start. And I just started barking orders. Like, I mean, it's what I do best around here. If there's anybody who's a hard ass in this company, it's going to be me. But I channeled that, what I believe is a strength at that moment. And I told Jay, who was with me in my office as I was, having a, mental short circuit there for 10 minutes. I was like, Jay, get downstairs, like, get the entire help desk team in a conference room. I started pointing around people. You tell people to get off the phone, get your asses in the conference room, call all the techs that are in the field or anybody who's in the field, and get them to dial into the conference bridge, because I just knew that we needed to regroup. And quite frankly, Damien, even when people were filing in and chiming in on the conference bridge, I sat in one of those chairs in that conference room and said, what the F am I going to tell these people?
Sure.
They're all eyes are on me. What am I going to say? Do you know what to say? I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Like, this is like, I'm frozen. Now here I am in one of those states again, like, even though there's this outward General Patton putting on a face, but on the inside, I was still like crumbling. And I looked at my business partner, who has got the opposite personality than me, right? He is smooth. He is easygoing. He is, you might even say laissez-faire. He's embodies that sort of Southern Italian culture of just like, everything's going to be fine. Just sip the espresso and kick your feet up and we're going to be good. Don't worry, right? Me, I'm sort of the hot-headed Italian. Anyway, so maybe that's why we make a good team here. I mean, after all these years, we haven't killed each other yet. So I would think that that's a positive thing. So big thumbs up to clashing but complementary type of personalities. But I looked at him and I kind of remembered something, because in him I see culture. I see our company culture. I think he helped influence greatly by his demeanor and his mannerisms and his way of thinking and acting and behaving. Not General Patton, right? And our 4 core values, which we derive from EOS, is what I started to think about. I started to think about our culture, and then I remembered that line from, and I believe it's Peter Drucker. Don't crucify me if I'm wrong. I believe it was Peter Drucker who said, culture eats strategy. So please don't call me out on that if I'm wrong. But you know what I mean. So I
That's
thought
right.
about our core values. I thought about our culture, and I said, that's it. That's the ticket right there, right? If we're going to survive this, if we're going to rely on anything, we cannot get through this unless we remain true to our core values, that we hold the line on our integrity and what makes us tick as an organization. So I'll recite them for you very quickly. There's 4. Team, together we get it done. And that was, I think, wow, like more than ever do we need that one. It sounds maybe not so grandiose on a normal average every day, but team, together we get it done. We really invest strongly in developing a cohesive team here. Humble confidence, service without ego, right? We've got to have a lot of humility right now, but we've also got to be experts in our field here, and what we know we can and cannot do, and execute well. Commitment, determined to do what it takes. Oh my goodness, you're going to need to have a lot of commitment and determination in those dark days, which we did, as was evidenced by the Herculean efforts of our team as we recovered. And then the last is respect, right? Respect always is the subtext of our core value of respect. And I knew that we needed to behave and navigate through this situation with that sort of that integrity that I talked about respecting people, even though that you may not get the respect back from them, the anger, the vitriol, the frustrations that we may be faced with. That we were going to maintain who we were in a respectful way. So I recited them and I expanded upon them in sort of those ways that I just explained to remind them of what makes us us. And that's essentially the rah-rah speech that I gave in those few moments. But I was upfront and honest with them. There's a lot that we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot that we can't say. So please limit what you say, but please get back to your desks, get back on the phone, start answering those emails, and just assure people that we're working on it. And as soon as we have information to provide, we will. Just keep checking your email. And that was the best that I could do in that moment in time. I mean, literally, it was like, and I really, in a lot of ways, I despise Hollywood, but sometimes, like, for the dramatic effect of stealing a scene out of a Hollywood movie, it was like that car driving down the road, everything is happy and peaceful, singing kids in the back seat, it's sunny out, and then bam, there's the T-boned, your car gets T-boned, the car flips, there's glass everywhere, there's blood splatter. I mean, that's the way it felt, right? Like we were happy-go-lucky going down the road, and suddenly out of nowhere, our world went upside down. What do you say and do in those situations, right? Are you prepared for that? And I would venture a guess that most organizations are not. We were not. We totally were not. And there's nothing wrong with being unprepared for something like that. However, if you're hearing my story, I would implore you to consider some conversation around that. It's not an expensive conversation. You don't have to hire expensive consultants or get an expensive tool, or just sit with your team and talk about role play. If I can go back to playing D&D, role play out some of those scenarios about what would you do? Where are your important things? What tools are you going to need? What communication systems? How are you going to behave? Who are you going to call, right? Do you have an insurance policy, right? Those sorts of things. You don't have to go through elaborate tabletops to help start preparing for something like this.
Have you ever wondered if you could recover your backups? Let me ask a better question. Have you ever had a backup fail to recover? Have you ever lost data? Yeah, that's me. Here's what's crazy. 58% of recoveries fail to recover. So if you think it's just you couldn't be more wrong. What are we going to do about that? Well, you've got 2 options. Enter Servosity. What we do and what we exist to do is test your backups and manage them for you. We test every volume, every single day. We do weekly testing, monthly testing, and quarterly testing. And you can hand off the drudgery and babysitting of backups and the day-to-day management to our team that monitors your backups for you. It's time to level up your backup game. One way you can do that is visit cervasi.com/learn more if you'd like to take the process that I've spent the last 18 years building and steal it and apply it to your MSP so that you can level up your backup game. Check out the link below in the description or visit cervasi.com/learn more. And one thing I want to highlight, Robert, is I'm not sure anybody could go through this and not feel completely unprepared. Just hearing, what you went through and just a little bit of the tone and emotion, I think feeling unprepared. But there's one thing I've heard from people that have made it through this that I heard from you, which is culture. So maybe you weren't prepared in terms of talked about this and done exercises, and I'm not taking away because that's a really good recommendation. But
Yes.
I don't know how this would have ended if you hadn't already invested in your team and built such a culture. So my counter argument is you were better prepared than you thought in some ways.
Yeah,
Maybe
I'll definitely. I'll take it. Right, I've learned to be gracious enough to take a compliment when they come my way. It's not my nature to accept compliments. I don't feel like I don't deserve them, but I will take that one, Damien. Thank you for saying that, and you really make an excellent point. There is, I'm going to butcher another statement around during good times, it's easy for people to be on their best behavior, but it's during the bad times when you really see people's character come out, right? So if you're an MSP owner or leader and you're thinking about maybe 25% of your staff are people who you wouldn't trust with your own children, maybe you have a problem, right? And maybe you won't be in a position like I was to survive and even thrive as well as we've done post-attack. I'm not, that's not a criticism, but I think you bring up a really good point here, Damien, is the value of our culture is so undervalued.
Yes.
And the investments that we make there in people and being a good leader, right? Listen, I was literally the asshole here for years, and my business partner had to pull me aside and tell me as much, right? And his own respectful, nice way of doing so. But I didn't realize that I was behaving that way. I thought I had the best interests of me and our company and everybody else involved. And I just realized it was my delivery. It wasn't in my heart to be a jerk, but it came across that way sometimes. And it wasn't, maybe I'm making myself sound like a terrible human being, but I was likened to sometimes you're like angry dad, right? And I had to learn that angry dad had no place here, right? And dad has a place here, but not angry dad, right? Dad could be stern and he could be demanding, but dad could be loving too and supportive, right? As he should be. And so therefore, sometimes, I guess the point I'm trying to make too is sometimes you have to look in the mirror and say, what's wrong with this culture? Well, why don't you start there? Do a self-evaluation first. Are you the problem?
Right. Are you hiring the right people? Are you investing in them? Are you the problem? There's so many questions. And, I've had the opportunity, is the way I say it. I was going to say pleasure. It's been my pleasure to help, but I hate that any MSP's ever been put in this situation to help some through it in certain ways. And there's the ones that have crumbled and the ones that haven't. And that's what I've taken away. And it's one of my core beliefs. The people are what build the business. They're what's important. And, I just want to make that point. You made that early investment. So I think everybody's listening knows I'm not just here to blow sunshine. This is just this is a core thing. If you invest in your team, you're more prepared than you realize.
Totally.
So,
right. And it's not just about, giving them gifts or throwing parties or, getting a foosball table. It's getting, I want to say, being at their level and being respectful of them and treating them with, I don't like it when people call me the boss here. I got one employee, longtime employee, an engineer that's been with us 25 years. I actually have two, by the way, that have that longevity with us. And he affectionately calls me boss man, right? And it's the only person I allow to call me the boss. I'm like, stop calling me boss. It's we're a team, right?
Yeah.
I'm your team member, right? And so it's these little subtle things that help, like recognition that people are human beings and they have their own needs. Whenever anyone on my team has a personal issue, we are, maybe even a little too generous sometimes. But I think that generosity comes back, and the dividends that pays is immense, because you buy so much loyalty and respect out of the people that you're leading, to show them that you're a compassionate leader, that you care about them, that it's not just about how much money I can squeeze out of your employment here.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So what happened next, and how did the team respond?
Well, we did exactly what everybody didn't want me to do. I told everybody to sit on their hands. Why? Because I got the legal advice to do so, and it was the correct advice. We did not know what we were dealing with, so we needed to. And I'm really shortening up the story here, otherwise I could just bloviate on for hours. We needed to get some forensic evidence completed in order to inform our recovery plan. We didn't know what we were dealing with at the point, right? We still didn't know, were they there for months, weeks, years, a day, an hour, a minute? Like we had so many questions, not enough answers. So
Sure.
while my technical team was like already suited up, for war,
Right.
they their backpacks on, their rifles locked and loaded, and they were ready to go. And I'm like, calm down.
Put me in, coach. Put me in.
Take all
Yeah.
your gear off, sit down, relax, maybe have a drink on Saturday, because war is coming. It's just not here yet. So it
That'd
wasn't
be
until
really
Sunday.
hard.
Yeah, it was. It was very difficult for them. And I want to say there were some minor transgressions here and there, but nothing that worked out negatively. There was some of the techs decided that they were going to do some sort of sandbox testing on this, like on some of our recovery efforts, which was good, right? Like it gave them something to do, something to focus on, and it was kind of limited and very limited in what they were doing. But by Sunday afternoon, we understood what our recovery point objective was. We knew that we could recover systems as late as 10:48 a.m. Friday morning, because it was at 10:49 a.m. when the attacker had entered our system for the first time.
Wow.
So we had conclusive proof of that forensically, double verified, meaning two independent analysis said the same exact thing. And so at that point we knew, well, we have every server backed up. Now it's just a question of nuking every desktop, laptop, and reinstalling Windows and going from there.
That sounds easy.
Yeah, well, it is on paper, except we had a math problem here, Damien, because I had 250 servers, 2,200 endpoints that needed to be recovered, and I only had about maybe 15, 18 technical hands to do the work.
Right.
So how do you do that, right? It's like having a timeshare and having every timeshare holder show up on the same week to vacation. You can't do that, right?
Right.
As we know, an MSP does not, is built sort of on that kind of timeshare model.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the story of community comes in, because news started to spread like wildfire amongst our friends. So it's another piece of advice that I would give anybody listening. If you are not invested, and I'm going to restate that word, invested, and you need to invest, not spend, but invest in peer groups, in IT conferences, in your relationships with solution partners. Notice how I didn't say vendors, right? They're not just squeezing you for money or trying to get over on you, right? You need to build relationships in all of those areas in the entire community ecosystem. We did so heavily since joining a peer group in 2010. And that peer group really taught us the go-giver mentality, although I think it was within my partner and I to be that way anyway. But I instinctually knew that by making friends in the industry, that somehow, some way that would help me over time. And I thought it was going to be like business advice, right?
Sure.
Or help me R&D something, or help me fast track R&D because you did all the work and you're just going to share the results with me, or give me those best practices, or teach me how to do something that I don't know how to do. We never expected that they would get on airplanes, owners of other MSPs, with some of their best engineers and spend a week in New York on their own dime helping us recover.
Wow.
And that help came not just from our direct peers, but also from solution partners that offered us a myriad of help in a lot of different ways. Axient ended up giving us some dedicated team on the back end and sent their top sales engineer, a very technical guy, out to New York from, I forget where he was living at the time, might have been Denver, to come out and spend like a week here to help us with recovery efforts. And then even the subtle sort of help where you get Huntress insisted, despite my 10 denials of their assistance, to send food, right? You guys got to eat, right? A friend of mine that works there, put Kyle Hansloven on the phone, their CEO, who I'd never known before. I didn't know who this guy was. In fact, we were barely even a customer. We only had like 100 of their agents as a trial rolled out. And here he was giving me some pretty awesome advice about, some things to think about. And he gave me some encouragement, not as somebody trying to sell me a product, but as almost like a friend out of the blue. Like, I am here to help you, brother. I'm here. He gave me some advice that really stuck with me, that helped me navigate some situations. His words echoed in my head. So Axient, Huntress, ConnectWise was a huge help in giving us an RMM tool for free for like the rest of the year. They were like, we don't want any money. Let's just get you on this thing because you need to be made whole. They didn't say we need to make you whole. They said you need to be made whole, right?
That's
There was
huge.
a difference there. And so these are the lessons that I think that come out of that community experience. Like, be a go-giver, go out into the community, invest in relationships. Don't ask for what, like, I often ask a solution partner, hey, how do I help you? And like, what? Like, nobody asks us that. I want to know how I can help you, right? Do you want an introduction? Do you like what? Do you need some help with like maybe a case study? Like, I want to know how I can help you too. Not just because I'm buying something from you doesn't mean I can't help you back.
Right.
Right. And that's why I think, and I don't want to take all the credit here, right? I keep saying the word I, but my business partner also of the same mentality, also making relationships with people that we leveraged during that time. He was super instrumental in, while I was in that operational mode of recovery and, again, channeling my inner General Patton, he was making sure that everybody was taken care of, that everybody was fed, right? And that there was a little bit of celebration some nights and a little bit of, let's relax a little bit. Let's, enjoy ourselves a little bit, as much as this is a hard time. Like, he focused on the people where I focused on the process, right?
That's a huge delineation.
Yeah. So, but the community support that we received was, and again, if I can make a slight D&D reference, I'll invoke Tolkien. It was like the fires of Gondor being lit. One member said, "Get your asses to New York," in an email to a bunch of other guys, and it was like the Riders of Rohan showing up right at that pivotal moment, just when we felt defeated and we would never be able to get through this. Help arrived, and more help arrived behind that. And then even behind that, more and more help behind that arrived. And it was an overwhelming and incredibly humbling experience. And I can almost feel the tears welling up in my eyes to think about all those people who came to our aid selflessly, and without any expectations of anything in return other than to say, this is a terrible situation, and if we don't help you, you're going to die, right?
Yeah.
So it was just an amazing experience in that way. We don't think about a ransomware attack. We think about all the negative sides of it, and it was truly negative. Please don't mistake me. I don't want anybody to ever go through this. But I really grasped hard to look for those positive things. And so the dichotomy of the highs and the lows throughout this whole ordeal were so stark. There was nothing in the middle, right? There was nothing average or transactional about anything that happened. It was either we were on cloud nine or we were on the ninth level of hell. And it was just, it changed me,
Yeah.
Damien. It changed me.
Robert, you were unfortunately, I think, an outlier in terms of talking about this. In terms of you had a solid culture of foundation. I'm not saying you're the only one, but when you add that and you add the peer group and the strong foundation of peers you had already built, and just this really strong community, I think you're, in my opinion, based on at least my personal experiences, we're better prepared than at least many others. Not everybody, but many. And I think that's amazing. So I want to talk about community. I know we want to lead into something and what folks can do.
Yeah.
Before I get there, help us understand what happened in terms of how did you keep your team going? How long did this take? You had backups. You could recover. It
Yep.
sounds like they did work. Unfortunately, that is
100%.
not always the actual case.
Yeah, we bit our nails wondering, are these damn backups that, we get the green light reports on, but are they, now the true test came, right?
Right.
Of restoring servers from backup. Now, thankfully, we had a perfect record in restoration. We had, and I'm going to put a little asterisk on that. We had one SBS small business server 2011 server out there. Remember, this attack happened in 2021. I know what you're all saying and thinking, right? Like, how could you have a customer that's still on such ancient? Well, we all have that one or two that just has the white knuckle death grip on something old that they don't want to get rid of. So
Right.
we had, it was impossible to get that thing to restore back. Because of all the old technology, and it was backing it up great. It just wouldn't restore. So we ended up having to spin up that instance in the cloud instead of a local restore and then move them to the cloud. So was that successful? I mean, you can argue that a lot of different ways, but listen,
you got them up and running. If you got
nobody
them up
lost
and
any
running
fingers or toes, right? Yes.
and didn't lose their data, and it was SBS.
Right.
That's a pretty good outcome.
That's why I say 100%.
Yeah.
But it took us 17 calendar days, and I really mean the word calendar because remember, we worked around the clock. Some of these guys on my team, God bless their hearts, they worked like 18 plus hour days. I only learned recently because I was interviewing my team individually on the events of the day just to, for documentation and recording. And I found out that one of our techs left one of our clients on the very first day of recovery at like midnight or 2 a.m. and was supposed to drive home to get someplace by 6 a.m., but ended up driving to that client, slept in his parking lot for like 2 hours, and then entered the guy's building at like 4 a.m. Like, had I known, and he intentionally kept it quiet because he didn't want anybody to know that, like, he violated orders of go home and go sleep, right?
Yeah.
But that's the dedication of some of these guys was just, like, it brings me to tears even thinking about it. Like, you just want to hug the guy and just thank him for being such an awesome human. But you want to strangle him at the same time to say, why'd you put yourself at such risk, right? But it's all water under the bridge. But, the recovery took us about 17 calendar days to get most systems fully operational. But getting to that 100% mark, like that was getting everybody to that 95% mark, but getting everybody to 100% took months, right? Because think about all the settings and configurations, and you forgot this printer, and what about that one application that I only use once every blue moon, or some tax software that I only use in January. Like, it was just, it was getting, death by 1,000 cuts on just all the little crap, right? And that was just as frustrating in some. Well, maybe I'm overemphasizing here. It was frustrating. It wasn't as frustrating as going through the main recovery efforts, but it was like that nagging, like, constant reminder of what happened to us. Like, we all just wanted to get to a point where we could say, are we just back to normal? And that day, I think, came somewhere in maybe October of that year, where I kept asking the team almost on a daily basis, like, is it normal yet? Like, what kind of tickets are coming in? Like, what kind of issues you're facing. And of course, I'm doing a lot of account management stuff, so I'm hearing it from that end as well. But it was somewhere around October that we felt like, all right, I think we've hit a stride now of normalcy, right?
Wow.
So I think that's an important lesson in this too, is just because you restore a system doesn't mean that really things are working the way they should be.
Yeah. And I can't imagine there was any normalcy after working around the clock for 17 calendar days.
No, people were exhausted. People delayed or even canceled vacations. It put a lot of stress on both individuals working here as well as family members. Damien, not to go too deep into this, but I had one of my key star players, a guy, a 25-year veteran, lost his dad. He died right in the middle of this, right? A week into recovery
Oh,
efforts,
no.
while his wife was about to give birth to their second child, like any day now. The day of his dad's funeral, he left the funeral in a mad rush to get to the hospital so he could be with his wife as she was giving birth, right? So it was like, what the hell? Like,
Right.
are you kidding me? Like, first of all, getting hit with this whole thing was it was terrible, and now like this thing has to happen to this poor man, and then go through, like, he was denied seeing his dad in the last days of his life, and then he was denied really to be there emotionally for his wife and the birth of their son, because where his head was. It was
Yeah.
in work. As much as we told him, stay away, like, forget here, we got you, and he was like, how, I can't walk away,
That's
like,
right.
we're in the middle of war, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And every good MSP, engineer that I've ever met that's at all any good, they just care. They just really care. Like, I know that they love solving problems. I know that I do and you do, Robert, but the reality is that they just can't walk away. They
nope.
just care too much. And I think there's some of them, like, you could say you're fired and they would still go restore them or something. You know what I mean? Like, not that you would
Yeah.
do that, but they couldn't walk away and leave it.
They can't walk away. They just care too much, and sometimes they don't even care as much about you as they care. Let me restate that. That's not what I really meant. It's like they almost care for the client just as much as they care for the organization that employs them, right?
Mm.
Like, they look at that client as their employer as well, right? They're just by extension a part of us. And it's really, honestly, the relationship that we try to instill with our clients is that we are an extension of their business. And I think our engineers take that to heart. So it's a good point.
Yeah. At the end of the day, they're people and we're supporting their people. So it's hard when you've had years supporting them to just, to not take that personally. Right.
Of course.
I want to make sure that we get to this part that I'm really excited for you to talk about, which is what you learned and what you did afterward. And there's this great response and there's a great resource that I was unaware of until I met you, Robert, that I think is not well known. So tell us what drove you to create this.
Sure.
And
So I'll try to give you an abbreviated version of this, but it was in August of that year when I was reminiscing is not really the right word, maybe ruminating on what had happened to us in the prior month and a half, and feeling grateful, right, for all of the help we received, and just kind of reflecting on everything that happened.
you were
And
feeling
wondering,
grateful a month and a half later?
I was feeling grateful for the support and help that we received, for
That's
sure.
amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had a lot of gratitude in my heart and appreciation, which, I learned to make sure that I was very vocal about. And it was in that moment that I had I started to question myself, like, why was I that fortunate? What did I do to deserve or to receive such help? And then that's when I was kind of thinking about the investments that I had spoken about earlier into community. And then it dawned on me that there's a lot of MSPs out there that don't make similar investments for whatever variety of reasons. They don't see the value, they don't have the time, they don't have the money, a combination of things, whatever the case may be, and said, how awful would it be had we been in the same scenario but had not made those investments, right? And I didn't want anybody in the world to go through that And it was also born, so while I had some positive emotions like gratitude in my heart, also this hatred of the people that had conducted this attack against us
Sure.
was also omnipresent at that moment. And I said, I got to do something with these two powerful emotions of both gratitude and hatred. And how do I make something good out of this? Put these two ingredients in a bowl, mix, stir well, bake at 350 for 25 minutes, see what happens. Well, what came out of the oven was this idea, which I'll cut right to the chase. I registered the domain name msp911.org. The vision that I had with that website, it would be the giant red button that you can hit in the event you have an emergency, or that sort of break glass in case of emergency. Because we were frozen in those first few hours. We didn't know who to call. We made a lot of different calls through a lot of different organizations. We were a little rudderless because of the initial shell shock, right, of what
Sure.
happened to us. And I just had this vision in my head that even after the shell shock, would somebody be able to survive an event like this without the help that we got? And in my mind, the answer was probably not. But how can I sit by and allow that to happen to the next guy or gal running an MSP out there? As a strong believer in the community, even though I might not have met you, or maybe you don't make the investments that I've made, I still feel a camaraderie with you, even though we've never met. We may never meet.
Hmm.
But I still feel like, this is part of our community. And I think our country is under attack too, right? That flag hangs behind me for good reason, because
Yep.
I'm very patriotic in that way. And so MSP911.org was the idea. And then I came to the horrible realization there's just no way I'm going to be able to do this on my own. I can't staff this. I can't, and I wasn't looking to make money on it. So fast forward to IT Nation Connect. I meet MJ Shore over at CompTIA. He had a similar kind of idea rattling around in his head. And I told him about my experience, and then my idea with the website, totally fell in love with it, put resources behind what is now known as the CompTIA Emergency Response Team. So if you go to that site, it's branded as the CompTIA Emergency Response Team. You'll see me listed there as the chair. Matt Lee is my co-chair. There's a bunch of wonderful, smart, and amazing humans. We are all 100% volunteer based. We don't monetize this. We don't make money on it. I'm just doing this because I feel altruistically, this is me paying it forward back to the community. And it's my way of fighting back against cyber criminals. I don't have the resources to go attack them. I'm not smart enough technically to be able to thwart them. I know some of you out there probably can go toe to toe with a threat actor. I can't technically. I don't have that skill. If they wanted to own me, they would. But that's not the point. The point is that what I can do is I can hopefully be the first wave in a building wave of people of community that are rallying around together, that are willing to lock arms together to say, you know what, when you attack one of us, you attack all of us.
Hmm.
So,
I love
so
that.
that's, the fast forward to today is that the website is active. There's a form on the page that if you are compromised in any kind of way, or you need help because of some sort of security incident, you can fill out the form. It's going to open a case in our online system. There's a whole notification process. Somebody will get back to you. I'll give you a couple of, for instances, Damien, since November, since we made this last change where it's now web form, we've taken 3 calls. They've all been very different. I'll talk a little bit about the call that I'm personally handling because I just happen to be on call. And this is a case of an individual who bought an MSP. It is a female. She has great business experience. She invested a ton of money into an MSP that she bought, a great, solid, profitable business. Here she is humming along, and then bam, somebody owns their data center, wiped and installs ransomware on all hosted servers, which is their entire business model, right? And now she's like looking at the face of annihilation staring her in the face. She's like, I'm going to lose my multi-million-dollar investment. I've been doing this for a year and a half. I'm dead. I've got lawsuits coming at me left, right, and center. What do I do? Now, by the time she logged the call with us, we She was already a couple of weeks into recovery, so we really couldn't guide her there. But the kind of coaching and assistance and camaraderie that we can offer through the emergency response team in that particular case was me just saying to her, "Hey, guess what? I went through this. I know
Mm-hmm.
exactly how I just in sharing my story with her and allowing her to sort of cry on my shoulder, I think provided her some comfort. It actually provided me a little bit of therapy myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a former victim, to be able to just be able to two victims be able to get together and one of them to say, I've been there, I've done this, here's the advice I got. I'll give you the same advice, consult with your attorney about this stuff. But, here's some things that I think you ought to be doing, things that you ought to say to your team, communications that you should be sending to your customers. And here's just some personal advice, right? I'd like to say that she has warmly received that friendship from me. And I, hope to continue to be able to provide that service to her over the weeks and months that unfold for her. At least I'm a voice out there that she can reach out to and go, Robert, I'm having a really awful day today. I just need somebody to talk to.
Mm.
So
That's
it could be that.
amazing.
The ultimate vision here, Damien, and we're not quite there yet, is to be able to replicate what happened with us, to be able to put an alarm or an alert out there and rally volunteers who are willing to come to your place of business and help you with recovery efforts the way we received help. That's the that's the ultimate vision. Legally, there's some challenges with that we're working through. But why CompTIA? Because they're the Switzerland of the MSP space. They don't compete with anybody. They're not, it's not like an RMM tool or a PSA tool or a cybersecurity tool. They're not competing with anybody.
Yeah, I love
So
that.
everybody loves CompTIA. So it seemed like the right place to put it.
Yeah, I love that. It's not vendor owned, not vendor controlled. I love that.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, I think the more you said community, like count us in, count you in, count other MSPs, the more people we get united, the more we'll be closer. Maybe in some cases, not always folks getting on a plane, the more folks that connect to what you're doing, then we might be able to help in different ways and have different experiences and different expertise. And I love the reference, to the flag, and because you talked about if we get together, we can defeat the bad guys, right? Maybe think of united we stand, divided we fall.
Correct.
And so if I'm an MSP, should I do this proactively? Should I get registered and signed up just in case? Do I hit this button? Do I only break in the case of ransomware attack? Do I rally the troops and get restores going and call all the others and then you guys after, legal and incident response? Help me understand.
The intention is that you would put in that call to us, first, because we're going to ask you questions like our intake form as a for instance, we'll ask you questions. Hey, like, do you have cyber liability insurance? Yes. Did you notify them? No. Okay. Hang up with me. Go call them first, right?
Yeah.
Because you need legal representation. Insurance needs to be notified. They're going to be able to help you with that. But once you get settled with them, give us a call back. Tell us how it went, right? Now I got the Kyle Hansloven in my head, right, about the advice. What did they tell you? Are you comfortable with them, right? Because if you're not comfortable with them, then you need to push back, right? And you need to stand your ground. I know that you feel like you're in the ER room and you're just going to listen to whatever the doctors are going to tell you. You got to stand up for yourself and say, hold on a second. I don't think that's the right course of action here. And here's why, right? Our goal and mission is not to influence them, but just to open their eyes up to the possibilities before them, right? We are not there to act as their legal representation or their forensic people, but we can help validate things. We can help share experiences so that they feel, and just to be able to feel like most MSP owners are what? Single owner. I happen to have a business partner, so we leveraged each other in that time. But most MSP owners are there. It's lonely at the top. I hear them say a lot as a facilitator, right? It's like, it's just me. I make all the decisions. I got 20 people who count on me, and they're going to look at me like blinking, robots. Like, what do we do, boss?
Right.
it's all on you. Like, don't you want somebody you can call and say, I got you, man. I got your back. We're going to help you. I don't know you. You don't know me, but like, we're going to help each other. Right. Just to be that voice. There is, mental health is becoming a bigger and bigger issue in our space and even in business,
Yeah.
but in our space in particular, Damien. And I want to say we're kind of bleeding into that area of this mental health, the psychological and emotional impact that something like this can have on you. It could be very devastating. That alone, other than the financial and the reputational damage that can unfold, but just the human side of this could be enough to take you from a strong leader that's going to get through something and survive to someone who fails miserably because you just didn't believe in yourself.
And you feel like you're attacked on all sides, right?
Yeah.
It's not just the ransom attack, right? You feel responsible to your team, you feel responsible to your clients, you feel all these emotions. You want it to be done immediately, and of course it won't, right? So there's just so many of those. So I'm glad you brought up that, because
Yep.
if you can't, never mind survive, but even just step up. And I don't mean that you're going to feel this way. Like, if anything, I want people to have permission and give themselves grace to feel that way. And
Yes.
if they can reach out and, contact you through msp911.org, contact me, contact somebody in a peer group, and they've either been there or helped others through it. It's all the difference in the world, because you're not alone, and you don't feel maybe like you felt this guilt or shame for, how could I let this happen? How could I let, and it gets deep, right? Like, there's, how did I let this happen to my team or clients, which is really, really deep. Then, like you were saying, how let this happen to my family? How let, do I, what you said hit me, like, do you call your daughter back home from college, right? To have that thought is to be human, but like, that's a horrible thought that I had, that you had to go through. And just that community is just, it's an amazing gift. I will say that, being that somebody that helps MSPs exclusively with backup and disaster recovery, we see ransomware all the time, unfortunately. And in all these years, I've been asked, what do you do? And not the technical angle. It's really just like, what do you do? And the best answer I had before was build those foundations with not only us, but most importantly, your peer groups, right? That's who you can call, kind of what you ended up doing before I
Yep.
knew you, Robert. And so I'm just completely over the moon about MSP911.org, CompTIA emergency response, all volunteer staffed, right? You're not making money, they're not making money, but more importantly, you're not paying for this, and this is worth its weight in gold. So one of the most, like a lot of things in life, some of the best things are free, and so I just, we're going to do everything possible to spread the word,
Great.
and
Appreciate that.
connect
Yeah.
people to this, because this is just an
And
amazing resource.
if anybody out there feels like that they could be, we're not just asking for, random volunteers. Everybody wants to help. I get that. But if you have a specific skill set in cybersecurity incident response, crisis management, that's kind of some of the skills that we're looking for. Everybody will raise their hand and say, yeah, I'll help, we're really kind of looking for people with that sort of experience. And even if you've been a victim, believe it or not, I hate to say it this way, but it's resume, man.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will take that. So at the very, very bottom of that webpage, there's a little kind of unceremonious link at the bottom. It says, click here to fill out a volunteer form. Not the form that you see on the page that will actually alert us that there's a problem, but way at the bottom. And we'll just exercise some patience, please. We've got a lot of incoming requests where, like I said, we're all running our own businesses and working hard to squeeze in an hour of time a week to help move the needle a little bit forward. It's been 2 years in the making so far, but we're finally kind of operational and delivering on these services. So if you volunteered or you do volunteer and you don't hear back right away, trust me, we got your information. We will get to you. And you can always contact me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find. I'm very visible out there. And just shoot me a note and let me know what your concerns or what your issues are about it. Really about
Thank you so much.
anything, honestly.
This has been a huge gift, Robert. Thank you. We'll make sure to put msp911.org. And if you're listening, you already know where to go. In the links, we'll put a link to your LinkedIn as well. Robert, anything else you would advise people as we close out today?
No, just, listen, you've heard this before. You don't need to hear me say it again, but I think it's worthwhile to note that, remember, cybersecurity is a journey. It's not a destination. And how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So if you feel like you're behind on things, it's probably because you are. But you know what? Take a breath. It's okay. Just take a step forward. Just do something small today or next week that improves your cybersecurity hygiene or posture, or for your customers, and just keep that continuous improvement mindset at work. So Rome was not built in a day. You too will get there.
Absolutely. Yeah. On that note, anybody's interested, we have a resource that's a slightly unusual, but cybersecurity of backups. We give it away. So it doesn't matter what tool you use if you'd like to apply that. And basically, the lens of this is, what do I do to protect my backups so that I can recover from local and not always from cloud? And so it's a 1% thing. It's what you said. Obviously you've got the basics, like not reusing credentials or not domain joining things that shouldn't be. And then you've got things like separate VLANs and other things that might take more time, and know that, like you said, Rome wasn't built in a day. So, so make sure to take advantage of that. Speaking of time, I know we could probably talk about this all day, Robert. I want to thank you for this gift of your time and sharing this incredibly traumatic experience, and how you've grown, your company has, in terms of culture and community, and the fact that you've built the CompTIA emergency response. It's just amazing. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate your time and your platform to spread the word even further. I don't do this for me. I'm doing it for us. And it sounds crazy, but you got to know me to understand how genuine I am and authentic I am about being that. Everything that I say and do, it's really about us. It's anything that I get behind is something that I genuinely and authentically and passionately feel like this is important, right? Otherwise, I should just spend my time promoting myself to actual paying customers.
Maybe do some of that too, right?
I try, and I do some of that, but I could ignore all of this, right? I could have said, I'm going to put this 100% behind me, never think about it, never talk about it again. But I just felt like it was not the patriotic thing to do for me. It was, I saw an opportunity to kind of raise that middle finger up to the cyber criminals in a way that maybe that is not expected, right? And that is, like I said, to move the community forward together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for doing that. It takes courage to share this and courage to do something about it. Robert, we may have to have you on and talk more about this, especially as the Emergency Response Center grows.
And there are other parts of the story are still unfolding. There's the case against Yaroslav Vasinski. Their sentencing is on March 1st of 2024. I'm sure I'll have more news to share about that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Robert.
All right. Thank you.